My son-in-law slid a stapled packet of paper across my own kitchen table and said very calmly, as if he were discussing the weather, "Starting next month, Frank, your rent will be $1,850, plus utilities." It was 9:12 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. The coffee machine was still dripping into my chipped blue mug, the same mug I'd drunk from every morning for 22 years. The smell of dark roast hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of toast from the stainless steel toaster I bought back in 2015, when my wife was still alive and complaining about crumbs on the counter. I stared at the papers. Rent, I repeated, because sometimes you have to taste a word before you decide whether to swallow it or spit it in someone's face. In my house. Evan didn't even blink. That's his talent, really. He has the face of a man selling you a defective car with a lifetime warranty and making you thank him for the honor. Our house, he corrected, brushing an invisible speck of dust off his Apple Watch. I mean, we all live here. Bills are going up. Interest rates, insurance, electricity. Everything's through the roof. We just need to formalize the arrangement. Across from him, my daughter Lauren sat with both hands wrapped around her mug, eyes fixed on the table. She'd stirred her coffee so long the spoon handle had gone cold. That's what she does when she doesn't want to look at me. Or at herself. "Frank, it's not personal," Evan went on, sliding the packet a little closer to me. "It's just economics. We looked up fair market value for a room in this neighborhood. Frankly, $1,850 for first-floor access, private bathroom, and use of the kitchen is below market. We're doing you a favor. Doing me a favor." There it was, the line. I picked up the top sheet, adjusting my reading glasses. "Residential tenancy agreement," it said in some pompous font, followed by my full legal name, Francis George Miller, as tenant. There was a neat line for my signature at the bottom of the last page. I've signed a lot of things in my 73 years. Paychecks, mortgage statements, school permission slips, birthday cards. This was the first time anyone had asked me to sign away my dignity. "And if I don't sign this?" I asked, keeping my voice polite. I learned long ago that shouting only wastes your breath. The real damage comes from what you do after the shouting is over. Evan glanced at Lauren, then back at me. "Look, we talked about this, Frank. You know we can't keep carrying all the costs. Property taxes went up. The new roof cost us nearly 12 grand. And he hesitated just a second too long. "Medical expenses aren't cheap. My medical expenses. The blood pressure pills that cost $30 a month. The cholesterol meds that are even cheaper. The physical therapy sessions after my fall last year that were covered mostly by Medicare. With a copay, I insisted on paying myself." Lauren finally spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Dad, we just need some help. It's not fair for Evan to carry everything. You're on Social Security. You get, $2,300 a month? You can afford it." I looked at my daughter. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, the way she used to wear it in college when she was cramming for exams and living off instant noodles I'd paid for. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "You're right," I said slowly. "I do get $2,318 a month, after Medicare deductions." Evan gave a satisfied little nod, as if I'd just agreed with his business proposal. "Exactly. So you cover the $1,850 rent plus, say, $250 toward utilities. You'll still have a couple hundred left over for incidentals. Like food," I suggested, "and socks if I'm feeling extravagant." He chuckled. I wasn't joking, but it's always good when your opponent thinks you are. "There's another option, of course," he added, tapping his fingers on the table. "We've been looking at assisted living places. Maple Ridge Senior Residence has great reviews. Private rooms, 3 meals a day, activities. But they run around $4,500 a month. You'd have to sell the house to afford it." He said sell the house the way some people say take out the trash. Lauren's head snapped up. "Evan." He shrugged. "What? I'm being honest. We talked about this." They'd talked about it. Without me. In my kitchen. Maybe over the granite counters I paid for in 2003. When granite was still a luxury and not whatever cheap nonsense they slap into condos now. "Let's keep this simple," he continued, pushing the papers even closer until the bottom edge touched my coffee ring on the table. "Sign the lease. Start paying rent April 1st. And we don't have to think about any drastic options. Everyone contributes, everyone wins." I looked around my kitchen while he talked. The oak cabinets I'd stained myself one summer when Lauren was 12, helping me by handing up screws with her paint-splattered fingers. The window over the sink where my wife, Diane, used to line up her African violets, talking to them like they were grandchildren. The calendar on the wall still turned to March 2024, with my neat, blocky handwriting marking doctor's appointments and the stupid little family game night Lauren had insisted on scheduling, which Evan had canceled last minute for work drinks. "This is still my house," I said finally, setting the papers down. "For now," Evan murmured. It was quiet, but I heard it. He might as well have slapped me. "What was that?" I asked. He flashed that quick, politician smile I've come to hate. "I just mean legally, technically sure. But we're the ones maintaining it, paying the insurance, keeping things running. I handle all the bills, Frank. I know what it costs." He did handle all the bills. Because I'd let him. Because 2 years ago, after my minor heart attack, Lauren had said, "Dad, let Evan help. He's good with numbers. You shouldn't be stressing about utilities and taxes at your age." So I'd handed over the online accounts, the auto-pays, the stack of envelopes that came every month. It felt like relief at the time. Sitting there that morning, staring at that lease, I realized it had been phase 1. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "I like to read the fine print before I sign anything." Lauren relaxed a little, mistaking my calm for surrender. "Of course, Dad. Take your time. But we really do need an answer by the end of the week. The first is in 2 weeks. Evan checked his watch. "We need to head out. I have a 10 o'clock client. Remote, but still. Zoom waits for no man." They left me at the table with the lease and the lingering smell of Evan's cologne, something expensive and sharp that didn't fit in my old kitchen. When the front door shut, the house felt different. Not quieter. I'm used to quiet, but colder, like someone had opened a window in January and forgot to close it. I picked up the packet again, flipped to the last page, and looked at that blank line waiting for my name. Rent in my own home. I poured myself another coffee instead, black this time. I've learned something over the years. You don't make big decisions before your second cup. By the time I finished it, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I bought this house in September of 1998. Back then, the siding was a tired beige. The roof was already 10 years old, and the yard was mostly dandelions. But it had 3 bedrooms, a big maple tree in the front, and a basement Diane said would make a perfect family room, once we get around to it. The price was $212,000. To me, it might as well have been the moon. I was 47, working as a shift supervisor at the Ford assembly plant, taking all the overtime I could get. Diane was a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. We scraped together a $22,000 down payment, 10 from savings, 5 from cashing out a small retirement account, 7 from a second job I'd taken installing garage doors on weekends. The mortgage was $890 a month at 6.9% interest. I remember those numbers better than I remember my own phone number. 25 years, I told Diane that first night, standing in the empty living room with pizza boxes on the floor. If we're lucky, we'll have it paid off before we hit 70. She laughed, that big laugh that filled rooms. I plan on hitting 70 with a better kitchen than this, Frank, and a dishwasher that doesn't sound like it's coughing up a lung. We made it more or less. We never missed a payment, even when the plant cut hours or the hospital froze raises. When Lauren was born in 1989, I started working nights so we wouldn't have to pay for daycare. Diane worked days. We traded off like shift workers, passing the baby between us during handovers in the driveway. My lunch pail in one hand, her stethoscope in the other. We didn't take vacations. Our vacations were Home Depot weekends. New windows 1 year, replacing the furnace the next. We saved up to remodel the kitchen in 2003. I still remember the sweat and dust of tearing out the old cabinets myself, sanding the new oak doors in the garage while Lauren sat cross-legged on the floor doing algebra homework. "Why are you doing it yourself?" she'd asked. "Because every dollar we don't pay a contractor is a dollar that stays in your college fund," I'd said. "You want to go to Michigan State, right? Those Spartans aren't cheap." She'd rolled her eyes but grinned. "I'll remember this when I'm rich and famous." I guess she remembered the rich part, not the rest. By the time Lauren graduated high school in 2007, we had about $48,000 saved for her college. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I took a small home equity loan, $25,000, to bridge the gap. for years of tuition, textbooks, dorm fees, meal plans. I tracked every check I wrote in a blue spiral notebook that still sits in my desk drawer. Diane and I used to joke that we'd paid for the university library brick by brick. Lauren graduated with a degree in marketing and minimal student loans. She moved into an apartment downtown with 2 roommates. Diane and I finally paid off the original mortgage in 2012, 24 years after we signed it. I stood in the kitchen with a paid-in-full letter from the bank, feeling 10 feet tall. Diane stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a cow. "We own this," she said, tapping the paper. "Nobody can take it from us now." I believed her. Diane got sick the next year. Breast cancer. Stage 3 when they found it. We fought like hell. Chemo, radiation, surgeries. Medical bills I still don't like to think about, even with insurance. We refinanced the house once more, pulling out $40,000 to cover what the insurance didn't. Experimental treatments, travel to a specialist in Chicago, medications that made her nauseous, but bought us a few extra months. She died on March 18th, 2016. I remember the date the way soldiers remember battlefields. After the funeral, the house became too big and too quiet. Lauren visited once a week at first, then twice a month. She married Evan in 2018. I paid $32,000 toward the wedding because she wanted something simple but still nice, which apparently translates to a hotel ballroom, a band, and a dress that cost more than my first car. "It's okay, Dad," she'd said when I hesitated at the invoice from a venue. "Evan says we'll pay you back once his new business takes off." His new business was a digital marketing agency. It took off right into a brick wall. By 2020, they had maxed out 2 credit cards and were behind on rent. Their apartment building was converting to condos, and they had to move. "We just need a year," Lauren said on a rainy Tuesday night, standing in my doorway with mascara streaked down her face. "Just until we save up for our own place. The landlord wants $2,300 for a 2-bedroom now. It's insane. Can we stay with you?" "Of course," I'd said before she even finished a sentence. "This is your home." Evan had come in behind her, carrying a box with their Wi-Fi router and a plant that looked like it was already dying. "We'll help with expenses, Frank," he'd promised, clapping me on the shoulder. "Groceries, utilities, whatever you need. We're not freeloaders." He was half right. They moved into the master bedroom, my bedroom, the room where Diane and I had spent most of our married life, because it has more space and we need a home office. I moved my clothes into the small bedroom downstairs, the one that had been Lauren's teenage cave. My queen bed barely fit between the walls. I told myself I didn't need the space. Old men don't need king-sized anything. At first it was nice. The house wasn't so quiet. There was laughter again, the sound of someone else's footsteps on the stairs. Lauren cooked sometimes pasta with too much garlic, the way Diane used to. Evan set up a big flat-screen TV in the living room and insisted I use his Netflix account. "You've never watched Breaking Bad, Frank? We'll fix that," he said, like he was doing me a favor. They never paid rent. Once in a while, Evan would come home with a bag of groceries and make a point of saying, "I got this round, Frank." Mostly, I still bought the food. I still paid the property tax bills when they came, the home insurance, the furnace maintenance. When the water heater leaked in 2021, I wrote the $1,850 check to the plumber. "You shouldn't be climbing down into the basement with that heart of yours," Lauren scolded when she caught me checking the pilot light afterward. "Let Evan handle the home repairs." So I stopped going into the basement. Then I stopped logging into the utility accounts. "Just give me your login info, Frank," Evan had said one evening, fork pointing at me over lasagna. "I'll set everything up for autopay. I do it for my clients all the time. It's easier at your age." At your age, I typed my usernames and passwords into his phone while he watched. A month later, the paper bills stopped coming. "It's all online now," he'd said. "Don't worry about it." They were saving for their own place, they said. A little house closer to downtown, maybe. They showed me Redfin listings on their phones. $500,000 fixer-uppers with tiny yards and no trees. I nodded and smiled and kept my doubts to myself. I'd learned by then that my doubts were not welcome guests in their marriage. 2 years passed in this half-life. I became a piece of furniture in the house I'd built. Useful occasionally, mostly invisible, until the morning Evan asked me for rent. That's the thing about disrespect. It doesn't arrive all at once. It drips in slowly, like a leaky faucet you keep meaning to fix. One day you wake up and realize the basement is flooded. I read the lease 3 times that day. It was boilerplate stuff, mostly. I could see where Evan had downloaded a template and then filled in the blanks. Tenant must vacate premises within 10 days of non-payment. Landlord may terminate tenancy at will. He'd even written in a late fee. $1.75 if not received by the 5th of each month. Ambitious, I muttered, circling it in red pen like I used to grade Lauren's math homework. Around 4 in the afternoon, I heard Evan's car pull into the driveway. The silver BMW he'd leased last year, because appearances matter in my line of work. I heard their voices in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. The walls just aren't as thick as they used to be, and they were standing right by the vent. He's going to sign it, Evan was saying, cabinet doors thudding as he rummaged for something. He doesn't have a choice. I don't know, Lauren replied. He's stubborn. You know how he is about the house. The house he can't afford to maintain? Evan scoffed. Lauren, be serious. The place is worth at least $780,000 now. I checked the comps. We're sitting on a gold mine while he watches reruns of Jeopardy. That's not fair, she said quietly. It's reality, he shot back. Look, we're not kicking him out tomorrow, but we need leverage. Once he's paying rent, the dynamic changes. Legally. I heard something thunk onto the counter. Probably his laptop bag. Our lawyer said it's much cleaner if there's a tenancy agreement. Paper trail. If we ever need to transition him. Transition him to what exactly? Lauren's voice wobbled on the last word. Assisted living, obviously. Evan said, You heard what Dr. Chen said about his heart. And he left the stove on last month. For 5 minutes, she protested. He caught it himself. Next time he might not. Do you want to be responsible if he burns the place down? Besides, the sooner we can sell, the better. Interest rates might go up again. We get him into Maple Ridge on Medicaid. We sell this place for $800, pay off our debt, put a down payment on a new build. We're set. We, not including me. My heart didn't race. My blood pressure didn't spike. I just stood there in my little downstairs room, staring at the beige wall, listening to my only child and her husband divide up my life like estate lawyers while I was still upstairs breathing. Evan, he'd never agree to sell, Lauren whispered. That's why we don't tell him until it's a done deal, Evan replied, lowering his voice like he thought my hearing went out with my knees. Once he's missed a couple of rent payments, we have cause. We can file for eviction. The lawyer said judges don't like throwing old people out on the street. But if we can show he can't manage his own finances, that he's a safety risk. He let the sentence hang. Something inside me went very still. It's a strange thing, feeling your own anger go cold, like some part of you steps back and starts taking notes. So what, Lauren said. We make him sign over the deed while he's transitioning? He already added you to his checking account, right? Evan said, and gave me online access to the utility bills. He trusts us. Once we're his official landlords, it's not a big leap to becoming his financial guardians. Power of attorney, deed transfer, whatever. We can handle it. You know your dad. He hates paperwork. He'll sign whatever keeps the peace. My hand went to the top drawer of my desk, closing around the thick, cream-colored folder inside. The one Diane and I had started after her diagnosis, labeled in my neat block letters. Legal/house. The deed was in there. The refinance documents. The statement from 2017 when we'd finally paid off the last damn cent of the home equity loan for her treatments. And right at the back, the paperwork from the day I'd sat in a different lawyer's office a year after she died and signed something Evan didn't know about. A revocable living trust. At the time, it had felt like a boring bit of estate planning. The lawyer, a calm woman named Priya Patel, had explained it all while I tried not to fall asleep in the leather chair. This way, Mr. Miller, if something happens to you, your assets avoid probate. Your daughter is the beneficiary, but you maintain full control while you're alive. The house is technically owned by the trust, of which you are the trustee. So it's still my house? I'd asked. She'd smiled. For all practical purposes, yes. You can live in it, sell it, rent it out, whatever you wish. The trust just holds title in a more efficient way. Diane would have liked her. No nonsense, clear-eyed. She'd insisted we do it, back when the cancer was still just a shadow on a scan. "I don't trust banks or courts, Frank," she'd said. "I trust you. Put everything in a trust, so some cousin we've never heard of doesn't try to fight Lauren over it." So I done it. The title had been transferred from Francis G. Miller to the Miller Family Revocable Trust, Francis G. Miller, trustee. It was a line on a piece of paper I'd promptly filed away and forgotten, until I heard my son-in-law planning to evict me from a house the trust owned. "Okay," Lauren said in the kitchen, her voice subdued. I don't want him to hate me." "He won't," Evan said. "He's your dad." "He'll," grumble. "Old people always do. But in the end, he'll sign what we need him to sign. They always do. Old people. Always." "I'll be home late," Evan added. "I've got drinks with a client at 7. Some tech guy. Big portfolio. Try to get your dad to sign by Friday, okay? The sooner we get this started, the better." The fridge door opened and closed. Footsteps moved down the hall. A moment later, the front door shut. I sat down at my desk and pulled out the trust folder. The paper was heavier than I remembered. My name looked solid on the page. Trustee. Not tenant. Not burden. I ran my thumb over the embossed seal. They wanted signatures? Fine. I would give them one. Just not the one they were expecting. Priya Patel's office hadn't changed much in 8 years. Same diplomas on the wall. Same potted plant in the corner that looked suspiciously artificial. Same faint smell of paper and toner and whatever air freshener is supposed to make nervous people feel calm. Priya herself had a few more gray strands in her black hair. "So did I?" "Frank," she said, standing to shake my hand. "It's good to see you. I wish my clients would visit more often when there isn't an emergency." "This is an emergency," I said, sitting down carefully. My hips complained. Just not the kind that shows up in a hospital. I told her everything, not with drama. I'm not a dramatic man by nature, but with a steady list of a man who has counted his own sacrifices one by one for 40 years. The tuition checks, the wedding deposit, the second mortgage for Diane's treatments, the temporary move-in that had stretched to 2 years, the breakfast with the lease agreement, the words I'd heard through the vent the night before. By the time I finished, Priya's pen had stopped moving. She looked at me for a long moment. "Do you have the trust documents with you?" she asked. I slid the folder across her desk. She flipped through, pages whispering against each other. When she reached the property schedule, she nodded. "As I suspected," she murmured. "The house is titled in the name of the trust. You are the sole trustee. Your daughter is the sole beneficiary upon your death." "Which means what exactly in English?" I asked. "It means," she said, "that while you're alive, you control the property entirely. Lauren and her husband have no legal claim to it whatsoever. Without your signature, they cannot sell it, refinance it, or make any binding agreement regarding it. Even if I signed their little lease as tenant?" I asked. She shook her head. "That would be messy and unnecessary. And frankly, you shouldn't sign anything they give you without having me review it first." "Good," I said, because I was thinking of signing something else. Her eyebrows rose. I leaned forward. "What would it take to sell the house?" She blinked. "Sell it?" "Yes," I said, "to someone who'll pay cash. Close quickly. No contingencies. And what would it take for me to take that money and buy myself a small condo or one of those senior apartments where people play cards and argue about bingo, so my daughter doesn't have to worry about me leaving the stove on?" Priya looked at me over steepled fingers. "That's a big decision, Frank." So I was handing over my passwords to a man who thinks I'm too old to understand monthly bills. I took a breath. I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing it because my daughter has forgotten whose roof she's standing under, and because my son-in-law thinks I'm a pawn in his little portfolio game. I want to make sure I'm the one moving the pieces. She studied me for another moment, then nodded slowly. "Realistically, given the market, we could probably list the property at around $795,000. Maybe higher. It's a good neighborhood." "Evan says $780,000, I said. "I figure I'd like to beat him by at least 15. That made her smile. "We could contact a realtor, but that would take time. I know a couple of investors who buy properties like yours outright. You'd get a little less than full market value, but we could close within 30 days. Maybe less." "How much less?" I asked. "If we listed at $795,000, An investor might come in around $760,000 cash, she said, after a quick mental calculation. After paying off any remaining liens, you'd walk away with the rest. You mentioned a small halleck. About $18,000 left, I said. I checked online this morning. Evan didn't bother changing that password. Her pen began moving again. Numbers danced across her legal pad. So roughly speaking, with closing costs, you'd net somewhere in the neighborhood of $730,000. I let that sink in. I'd never seen that many zeros in one place with my name at the top. Not really. Not in a way I could touch. Can I buy somewhere outright with that? I asked. More than one somewhere, if you wanted, she said. But given your age, I'd recommend something low maintenance. A condo with an elevator. Or there's a senior living complex on Maple Grove Drive. Independent units, optional services. I've had other clients there. They are happy. Maple Grove, I repeated. Is that different from Maple Ridge? That's the one my son-in-law wants to ship me off to. She grimaced. Maple Ridge is assisted living. Maple Grove Ice independent, with services if needed. Big difference in cost and control. And how much would Maple Grove cost? I asked. She typed something into her computer, scrolled, clicked. 2-bedroom unit, around 950 square feet. Current listings are in the $260,000 to $280,000 range. I laughed. It came out sharper than I intended. So I sell the house out from under them, buy myself a decent little place, and still have nearly $500,000 left in the bank? Roughly, she said. Give or take. And they get? I asked. She paused. That depends on you. You control the trust. You can amend it. You can leave Lauren something, nothing, or everything. You can add conditions. You can also remove her husband entirely from any access. I thought of Evan's voice through the vent. We get him into Maple Ridge on Medicaid. We sell this place, pay off our debt. I thought of Lauren's face that morning at the table. The way she couldn't look at me when he said, our house. I don't want to cut her out completely, I said slowly. She's still my daughter, and she's not all him. But I want her to feel this, to understand that you don't get to treat people like furniture and keep the house they bought. That's possible, Priya said. We can leave specific instructions in the trust. For example, she only inherits whatever's left if she's not living with her husband, or if she meets certain conditions, she trailed off, seeing my hesitation. We can keep it simple, too. You don't have to decide everything today. I picked up the pen she'd laid on the desk. It felt heavier than Evan's cheap ballpoint at the kitchen table. What do I have to sign? I asked, to start the sale. She slid a document toward me. This is an authorization for me to engage an investor on behalf of the trust and negotiate terms. Once we have an offer, there will be a purchase agreement. That's the big one. I studied the form. Words blurred into a gray river. My name appeared several times. Trustee. Seller. Authorized. I signed at the bottom. My hand didn't shake. That's it? I asked. That's it for today, she said. I'll make some calls. In the meantime, I suggest you start quietly organizing your things. Do you have somewhere to stay temporarily if we close before your new place is ready? My nephew Tom has a finished basement, I said. He's been nagging me to move in with him since Diane died. He'll consider it winning a long argument. Good, she said. And Frank? Yes. When you're ready, she said gently. Bring me that lease they gave you. I'd like to frame it. It moved faster than I expected. 2 days later, Priya called. I have an offer, she said. $765,000. Cash. They'll close in 21 days if title is clean. I almost asked if there was a catch. There's always a catch. Then I remembered the catch had moved into my master bedroom and hung his suits in my closet. Send me the papers, I said. I'll come in tomorrow. You'll need to sign in person, she said. It has to be notarized. The next morning, while Lauren and Evan were at work, she had a nonprofit downtown. He had his little glass-walled co-working space where he managed clients and posted motivational quotes on LinkedIn. I took 3 empty boxes from the garage and started packing. I didn't take much. Diane's jewelry box, the photo albums from the 80s and 90s, the ones with bad haircuts and worse wallpaper, the blue spiral notebook with every check I'd ever written for Lauren's education, my father's pocket watch, the framed paid-in-full letter from 2012, the one Diane had stuck on the fridge. I left the big furniture, the bed, the couch, the TV Evan had insisted on mounting on the wall. Let them argue over who owns what when the new owner walked in. At 2:00 p.m., I was back in Priya's office. The purchase agreement was thick, but she'd marked all the important places with yellow tabs. "This is it," she said quietly. "Once you sign, the trust sells the house. On closing day, the funds go into the trust account. From there, we can wire what you need for your new place, invest the rest." "And Lauren and Evan?" I asked. She folded her hands. "They'll have to move. The sale is subject to transfer of vacant possession. They have no lease, no legal protection. They're essentially occupants at your pleasure, which I gather is about to run out." "I'd say we're at negative pleasure at this point," I said. The notary, a young woman with tired eyes and ink on her fingers, watched as I signed on the lines. "Francis G. Miller, trustee." My hand cramped a little by the fourth signature. I made a small joke about that. No one laughed, but that was all right. Some jokes are just for yourself. When I put the pen down, something subtle shifted inside me. Like a rope I hadn't known I'd been pulling on for years suddenly went slack. "That's it?" I asked. Priya nodded. "That's it. They'll do an inspection next week, mostly for their own records. Closing is set for 3 Fridays from now. On that day, ownership transfers. You need to be out by noon." "I can manage," I said. "I've moved faster for less." We spent another hour going over arrangements for Maple Grove. There was a unit available on the 3rd floor, 2 bedrooms, view of a little man-made pond. I put down a deposit, feeling like a kid reserving a dorm room again. Only this time, nobody else was paying for it. On my way out, I slipped a folded residential tenancy agreement onto Priya's desk. "In case you still want to frame it," I said. She laughed then. "Properly. That one," she said, "I might pin to my bulletin board." Evan and Lauren went to Cancun week the inspection happened. "Just 4 days," Lauren said at dinner when they told me. "We found a great deal. All-inclusive. We haven't had a vacation in years." "You had a honeymoon in Italy 4 years ago," I said mildly. "That doesn't count," she said. "We were stressed." Evan laughed. "Don't worry, Frank. We'll bring you back a t-shirt." They left on Thursday morning, bags rolling down the driveway, an Uber idling at the curb. I stood on the porch and waved like any dutiful father. "Don't forget your passport," I called. Evan patted his pocket. "Got it. Don't burn the house down while we're gone, okay?" Lauren winced. I pretended not to notice. They were somewhere over Texasian. The inspector rang the bell. He was polite, took photos, asked about the age of the roof, the furnace, the wiring. I answered his questions the way I've answered questions my whole life. Directly, no fluff. "They know they're buying it with people inside?" he asked at one point, glancing at the shoes lined neatly by the front door. "They know it'll be empty by closing," I said. He didn't ask any more questions. I moved in with my nephew Tom the following Thursday. It took 2 trips in his pickup to move my things. "Are you sure you don't want to tell Lauren?" Tom asked as we carried boxes into his basement. "This is big." "I'll tell her," I said, "just not yet." Closing was scheduled for the next day at 11:00 a.m. I arrived at Priya's office in my one good suit. It was the same suit I'd worn to Lauren's graduation and Diane's funeral. It fit differently now. Looser around the shoulders, tighter at the waist. Time has a sense of humor. The buyers were there, a middle-aged couple with a small property company. They shook my hand, said they loved the neighborhood, that they planned to rent the house to a family. "Good," I said. "This place deserves a family." At 11:23 a.m., I signed the closing documents. At 11:24 a.m., I was no longer the owner of the house I'd spent 25 years paying for and 8 years grieving in. At 11:25 a.m., the trust account balance went from 4 digits to 7. I checked it later on my phone. Alone in the parking lot. $731,482.19. I'd never felt so rich and so light at the same time. The new owners had arranged for a locksmith to meet them at the house at 1:00 p.m. Priya had coordinated everything. All I had to do was hand over the keys. I drove back one last time. The maple tree out front was just starting to bud. The same tree Lauren had climbed when she was 8, scaring Diane half to death. The same tree Evan had wanted to trim back last year because it dropped too many leaves on his precious BMW. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the locksmithsmen pull up. The new owners arrived a minute later, all smiles and signed documents. "We'll change the locks now," the locksmith said, hefting his toolbox. "Shouldn't take long." I handed the house keys to the new owner. The brass felt warm from my pocket. "You sure you don't want to walk through one last time?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I've lived it enough." At 1:15 p.m., the front door had new locks. At 6:40 p.m., Lauren called. "Dad, where are you?" Her voice was tight. In the background, I could hear raised voices, a car door slamming. "At Tom's," I said. "Why?" "We just got home," she said, breathing hard. "Our keys don't work. There's a sign on the lawn. It says sold. And there's a letter taped to the door with your name on it." "Ah," I said. "You must have missed my note on the fridge before you left." "What note?" she almost shouted. "The one that said I'd be moving out this week," I said, "and that some changes were coming." She was silent for a second. Then, faintly, I heard Evan in the background. "Ask him what the hell is going on, Lauren." There was rustling, and then his voice was in my ear, sharp and tight. "Frank, what did you do?" he demanded. "The realtor sign says the house sold. There are strangers on my porch. They're saying they own the place. This has to be a mistake." "No mistake," I said. "I signed the papers this morning. The trust sold the house." "The what?" he sputtered. "The Miller Family Revocable Trust," I said. "Set up in 2017. The house has been in its name ever since. I'm the trustee. I decided to liquidate the asset." "You can't just sell our house," he shouted. "Correction," I said. "I can sell my house," which I did. Our house was a fantasy, Evan, like your clients." I heard a woman's voice in the background, probably the new owner's wife, politely asking them to step off the property. Someone else said something about calling the police if they didn't. "You sign a lease," Evan said desperately. "You agreed to pay rent. You can't just—" "I never signed a lease," I said. "Check the bottom line. It's still blank. You might want to talk to your lawyer about what that means for your legal leverage." There was a sharp intake of breath. I imagined him flipping through the pages in his hands, looking for my name and not finding it. "You knew," he said slowly. "You knew about the trust. You planned this." "I learned about the trust from a lawyer who created it," I said. "I planned this after you tried to charge me rent in my own home and discussed shipping me off to Maple Ridge behind my back." Lauren's voice cut in high and breathless. "Dad, we don't have anywhere to go. All our stuff is inside." "The buyers know I had family living there," I said. "They agreed to let you in to collect your belongings. I told them you'd be out by Sunday evening. After that, it's their call. Maybe you can negotiate a rental agreement with them." I let that hang for half a beat. "Just make sure you read the fine print." "Dad, please," Lauren whispered. "We can't afford a new place right now. You know that. Evan's business is still recovering. My student loans." "I know exactly what I've already paid for," I said, my voice thinner than I wanted, but steady. $48,000 for your bachelor's degree, $32,000 for your wedding, $25,000 for Evan's failed startup, 2 years of free room and board. I funded your education, your marriage, and your safety net. I'm done funding your entitlement." There was a muffled sob. I closed my eyes for a moment. It's a strange kind of pain, hearing your child cry because you finally stopped bleeding from. "I didn't cut you out," I added softer. "Talk to Ms. Patel if you don't believe me. The trust still names you as beneficiary. If there's anything left when I'm gone, you'll get it. But I will not subsidize a man who calls me a burden in a house he didn't pay for our asset." "Frank," Evan began. "I suggest," I interrupted, "that you take that energy and put it into finding a rental you can afford. There's a nice little 2-bedroom on Oak Street for $1,950. I saw it on Zillow. Market rate." He swore loudly. Lauren gasped. "Dad," she said, "how could you do this to us?" "I learned from the best," I said quietly. I listened by the vent. There was a long silence. Finally, she said very small, "Where are you going to live?" "In a 2-bedroom at Maple Grove," I said. "Independent living. 3rd floor. There's an elevator. They have a card room and a walking path. I'll be paying my own rent. On time." "You could have just talked to us," she whispered. I tried, I said, for years. You talked to me when you needed tuition or deposits or a place to live. When I needed respect, you gave me a lease. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since the morning at the kitchen table. I love you, Lauren, I added. That hasn't changed. But I won't let your husband manage me like a line item anymore. When you're ready to talk like my daughter again, without him speaking through you, you know my number. I need to go, she said, voice breaking. The line went dead. I stood in Tom's driveway for a moment, phone still in my hand, watching a couple of kids ride bikes down the street. The sky was turning the soft pink Diane used to point out from our porch. You okay, Uncle Frank? Tom called from the garage. I slipped the phone into my pocket. I will be, I said. My new place isn't big. 962 square feet, according to the brochure. 2 bedrooms. 1 for sleeping. 1 for the things I can't quite let go of yet. A little balcony overlooking a pond with a ridiculous fountain that lights up at night. The kitchen has white cabinets and laminate counters that pretend to be granite. There's a dishwasher that doesn't cough, a fridge with a water dispenser in the door, and enough room on the wall for Diane's old clock. I moved in last week. The first night, I made myself a pot of chicken soup. Real chicken, real vegetables. The way Diane used to. I ate it at my tiny dining table while an evening news anchor talked about interest rates and housing shortages. I paid my first month's rent online. $1,450. It felt good, clean, like an honest transaction between adults. In the common room downstairs, there's a corkboard where people pin up photos and notices. Someone was advertising a weekly poker game. Someone else needed a ride to Costco. I pinned up a photo of the maple tree in front of my old house. Just the tree. No faces. Underneath, on a yellow sticky note, I wrote, taken 2024. After 25 years of mortgage payments and one very useful trust. Last Saturday, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, in the same chipped blue mug, and watched the fountain sputter to life. My phone buzzed once. A text from Lauren. We're in an apartment. It's small, but we'll manage. I'm thinking about things. I'll call soon. I typed back. Good. I'll be here. I didn't add where here was. She can ask when she's ready. People like to say home is where the heart is. That's poetic, but inaccurate. Home is where your name is on the deed or on the lease, because you put it there yourself, with eyes open and hand steady. My son-in-law tried to charge me rent in my own home. In the end, all it took was one signature to remind him whose house it really was, and to make sure that the only rent I ever pay again is the rent I choose.